Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about oversampling, FIR filters, and harmonic distortion. As an exercise, we're going to clone this AMEK 200 equalizer from Brainworx. I actually like this equalizer quite a lot for tone shaping when I'm mastering in digital domain. It's sometimes quite refreshing to have an equalizer that doesn't have analyzer or graph. This one also maps very well into control surfaces, so you can use this without a mouse. Let's take a look at the features of this plugin. This plugin has 5 bands of EQ, low and high pass filters, TMT functionality, mono maker, stereo width, and harmonic distortion. Today we are not talking about the filters of the plugin or the TMT functionality, mono maker, stereo width, or the noise the plugin creates. We are going to concentrate on the EQ itself, the oversampling of the EQ, and the harmonic distortion component. First, let's take a look at the harmonic distortion. This plugin creates third-order harmonic distortion that has flat frequency response. If we look at the frequency response of this plugin, we can see this filter near the Nyquist frequency. If we check the phase response, we can see that it's almost linear phase. And if we check the impulse response, we can see that it's symmetric. From these clues, we can predict that this plugin is oversampling. Let's find out what's the oversampling multiplier. To find this out, we will create a bell boost near the Nyquist frequency and then use another equalizer where we can change the oversampling multiplier to try to match the curves. From here you can see that when you boost a frequency in AMEK, it also boosts the overall level. Let's fix that. Now let's try to match the left side of the bell. The standard EQ is using now 2x oversampling. Now you can see that the left side matches pretty well, but the right side is less symmetric than the AMEK EQ. Let's raise the oversampling to 8x. We need to readjust the Q value. Now we can see that standard EQ is more symmetric than AMEK. Let's lower the oversampling to 4. Now we see that the curves match, so we can predict that the AMEK is 4 times oversampling. Let's take a look at the oversampling filter one more time. Let's zoom in. Here we see the filter response of the oversampling filter. If we want a perfect clone of this plugin, we also have to clone this filter. To do a perfect clone, we would actually need to code a new plugin to use this same FIR filter for oversampling. But instead of that, we are going to take a convolution of this filter and then we're going to add that at the end of our plugin chain. Let's go through this Reaper setup I built. On track 1 I have a source channel that has pink noise generator, tone generator, and a drum loop on the track. On a track 2 we have the AMEK 200 plugin that we try to clone. On a track 3 I have a plugin chain that clones the AMEK 200 plugin. Let's route the noise to channels 2 and 3. The channel 3 has inverted polarity, so we get a perfect null. First, let's enable the AMEK 200 EQ plugin. As we can see, none of the EQ functionalities are enabled. The reason we don't have a perfect null is the oversampling filter of this plugin. I made a convolution of this filter and put it into a reverb plugin. Because the impulse is 1024 samples long, we have to introduce 512 samples of delay on the AMEK track so that they are in phase. Also, my impulse is not exactly the same volume as the AMEK filter, so we also have to introduce volume adjustment to our plugin chain. I inserted a low-pass filter to 21,000 Hz before the analyzer because the convolution was not perfect. This is what happens if I remove this filter. You can see that the convolution was not perfect near the Nyquist frequency. This means that my plugin chain and the AMEK sound very different above 21K, but I don't really care. Let's see how good null we have right now. Let's open just the AMEK channel and check the LUFS value. It's -17. Let's enable the clone chain, check the value again. It's -129. The difference signal is less than -110 dB LUFS. Next, let's enable the EQ band. I used the standard EQ with 4 times oversampling. It took a lot of trial and error to match the EQs. If someone wants to replicate this, I turned the mid EQ knobs as far clockwise as possible and enabled the 7 dB maximum boost. These are the EQ settings I used for the standard EQ. Since the AMEK EQ also boosts the overall level when you are boosting a EQ band, we needed to add a volume adjustment. Now let's look how good null we have. The LUFS value is now -110. The difference signal is still below -90. Let's move on to the harmonic distortion. I cranked the THD all the way in the AMEK EQ. For harmonic distortion, I'm using free Melda M-Saturator plugin. To avoid aliasing, I'm oversampling it inside Meta plugin. This was again a lot of trial and error, but if you want to replicate this, this is the value I used for distortion. Again, I needed to compensate the volume a bit. Let's remove the oversampling to see the effect of aliasing. This ripple we see in the frequency response is probably due to the oversampling filter of the Meta plugin. But the oversampling still gives better result than without oversampling. Let's see how good the final null is. The final LUFS value is about -94, so the final difference signal is about -77. So how good null is this exactly? I'm gonna play you now the pink noise through the AMEK plugin. Let's unmute the clone. To get a better idea what this difference means, let's create the same difference with volume. Let's enable the noise. And remember this LUFS value. Let's route the noise to these 2 channels. As you can see, they create perfect null. Let's enable this plugin. This difference is created with volume adjustment of 0.0012 dB. I hope you enjoyed this video. Next time we're gonna take a look at a little bit more complex distortion patterns.